Someday. I think we're using mic 3 as well.
Yeah, just someone has to.
Oh, really?
Oh. Okay. I mean, it's gonna get starting. Okay. Hello, hello. Is the mic on? Yeah.
Woo!
Okay, so this is World of Illusion. Welcome to the World of Illusion. We are going to start off pretty much immediately with a one-frame trick in which basically you'll see Edenal here approach these seesaws, and what he wants to do, normally he'd kind of jump from seesaw to seesaw, but what he's going to be trying to do is get a one-frame trick, and if he can do it, he'll jump all the way up.
Really wants,
That's-
oh,
there you go.
nice.
And so you can actually chain those together to make it just about all the way up very, very quickly.
Oh.
So you can really save a lot of time there. So you saw just how handy that can be there. And we'll see that again later on. Shortly after that, what Edenal did, see, knowing how running speed in this game works is very important. You basically have 4 different running speeds, kind of as you're running, just normally, your running speed oscillates between 4 different values. You can't see it because it's frame by frame, but it's constantly changing. And so what that ends up meaning is that once you jump during one of those speeds, your current speed that you're running at is actually kept for that jump. It's kind of similar to Super Mario World in that regard. So if you could theoretically, I think, like chain the jumps together, then at the correct speed, or at the maximum speed, then you can optimize your speed a little bit. And especially, what really helps is as you're falling off of a ledge, then your speed is kept at the specific value that you jumped at. So you can really kind of, throughout the run, because there are obviously so many ledges that you're falling off, throughout the run you can very frequently kind of optimize your speed and save a lot of time constantly. And I mean, we'll see it a little bit more throughout the run, but what Edenal did earlier was he kind of crawled off of crawling is very interesting in this game, and if you crawl off of certain ledges, then you can kind of fall off of them at speeds faster than you'd normally get just from running. So Edenal was able to use that and then chain his jumps together so that as you run along the screen, if you're at a higher speed, then when you're running, your running speed slows down. So he chained those jumps together so that his run speed didn't slow down. This is the first boss of the game. There's not too much to it except for his pattern is consistent, except for when he goes off the screen after this little dance he does here, and then he can appear in one of 3 spots: left, middle, or right.
Nice.
So great. So Edenal got the best luck because the spider appeared on the left side of the map where Edenal was hoping that he would appear, and also where he tends to appear the most. So soon into stage 2, after this brief auto-scroller, you'll see a bit of a glitch. Quite a bit of a glitch, in fact, because what happens is the way you're supposed to progress through the next screen of this level, you're supposed to kind of trigger these rising platforms by standing on them, but and so you'll kind of do that over and over again until you reach the end of the screen. But what you can do is by triggering a platform and then turning around and running back, you can actually despawn that platform. And what ends up happening is that the platform, it doesn't just come back, it's just not there. So you'll see what happens as a result of that. And down he goes into the void. And so after this specific setup, he's able to kind of just cruise through this out-of-bounds area, not only completing this screen faster, but also skipping the next 2 screens. It's very fortunate, in fact, because those couple screens that he skips if they were included in the speedrun, those couple screens would be pretty nasty to use because there's some luck involved.
So, what's it called? Leap of faith.
Yeah, there's a leap of faith because when you're falling on one of those screens that he skips, you kind of jump off this ledge, and onto this small little series of platforms below. But the platforms where they appear are randomly generated. So if you just have to hope that you land on one if you were to do it, but fortunately we can skip it. That cloud area he just went through is pretty interesting because he's able to make use of that same kind of velocity effect that we were talking about, where you can see you were able to see when you land on a cloud, it speeds you up, and then you're able to maintain your speed by jumping while the cloud is still speeding you up. This boss is pretty standard, nothing really huge to speak of, but so he was able to complete it with no difficulty. In stage 3 is really where kind of managing your health and damage boosts come into play. The way damage boosts work in this game, if you run into an enemy or jump into an enemy, then Mickey will become stunned for a moment, and you just have to kind of pause the gameplay for a second. But if you crawl, then you don't see that stun animation, and you just kind of crawl into whatever you take damage from, and then continue immediately after. So we'll see a little bit about that once in the land part of stage 3. For this water part, the thing that's interesting to note is that Edenal really, really wants to avoid touching the ground, and at some point the game forces you to touch the ground, but we were talking about kind of velocities and maintaining your speed in this game. So imagine that, like I mentioned, when you jump in this game, your speed is fixed at the most recent value. So imagine that this entire bubble section, you're almost kind of flying because you're never touching the ground. And when you enter the screen, your speed is set to one of the ideal speeds that you can get. So if you were to touch the ground in that bubble section, your speed would kind of start oscillating again as if you were on the ground, and then you'd potentially start going at a lower speed. There's ways to kind of set your speed back to what you want it to be, but you just want to avoid touching the ground so that you can keep that high speed.
Yeah, basically just tapping right, and then you can get a random speed.
The ledge jumps that we were talking about in stage 1 are very, very important in this section because there are these cycles of clams that you need to meet. And so if you're able to control your speed properly by making all the jumps, you can kind of visually see that you
Nice.
speed up there. Yeah. So he was able to meet that clam cycle. If you miss a couple of those ledge jumps, then the clam will open up and damage you. But fortunately that didn't happen there because he had really good ledge jumps. So now we have another bubble section where that same kind of idea comes into play, where you don't want to touch the ground. No, never mind.
Short section.
Yeah, but now we'll start really seeing those damage boosts in action because you'll kind of see those these harpoons, tridents coming from the sky. So you can see right there, he crawled through that one. If he had just run through it, then there would be a stun animation. Whereas there, he kind of used a jump to his advantage, so that, yeah, he saw the stun animation, but he was able to kind of carry it with him through the jump. And so if you had messed up earlier in the stage, such as taking damage from a clam, you would have less health than Edenal does right now. You can see he has 2 health. And so an important part of this game is you need to be monitoring your health and seeing how you are there, so that you can use the damage boosts when you need to, but at the same time, obviously, you don't want to take your last hit and die. This shark boss has a fixed pattern, I believe, but there are a couple different ways to beat him. However, you'll still, no matter what strategy you use, you'll still finish him at around the same time,
Yeah.
and certainly on the same kind of cycle. Meanwhile, if you're playing this game for the first time, that shark boss can give you some serious problems. So we saw that seesaw jump before. The same idea comes into play on these stapler jumps. Edenal has a 1-frame window to save a bit of time. He got it there.
Nice.
And then this one is even more important. It's
Nice.
very nice. Second try in both. for one-frame jumps, again, I mean, this is a 60 FPS game, so to say you have a one-frame opportunity to get those jumps means you have a 1 in 60 kind of time frame to be able to get those jumps. So it's one-frame jumps in 60 frame per second games are very difficult, so Edenal got those very quickly. So here we have Cake Land. You can see that those little kind of cream puff clouds collapse when you jump on them. But you have a very, very narrow window where you can actually jump before they collapse, which actually kind of helps you to get speed you need in some places. Or, sorry, height you need to get in some places.
You can see that he kind of went into the mistletoe thingy there. They don't cause damage, but they keep you in place for a couple of seconds, so ideally you want to avoid that.
So here we have a lovely auto-scroller. Every game needs an auto-scroller, but this one is actually pretty well placed because coming into this next stage, you really, really want to have a lot of health because it's just so massively important to get your damage boosts properly. And also just because it's kind of hard in general, and so you want to kind of have that extra buffer. So you're able to see that he collected that power up there, that cake health, and so his health is max now going into this next level.
Regular game was.
But first, finishing Cake Land. So as we approach this boss, there's a bit of a quick kill that you can get. You need to time your attacks very carefully. Many games have these kind of invulnerability frames, and this game is no exception. So you want to be able to hit that boss as soon as you can. Like you can see here that she is not stopping flashing, so Edenal is really nice.
Nice,
He got the
perfect.
quick kill. So because of the way that she flies, if there's any kind of gap in between your hits, if she has some kind of vulnerability period between those invulnerability periods, then she'll kind of go to the next little cycle, and you'll lose some time on
Nice.
her.
That jump is really hard.
Here we have a pretty standard area, but the rest of the game is nothing but standard, or anything but standard. The Illusion series is quite extensive. Kind of, I think, depending on if you're paying attention to kind of the U.S. qualification or the U.S. kind of definition, or the Japanese, I believe, definition. It'll include different games, but you may have heard of many other games in this series, such as Castle of Illusion for the Genesis, Castle of Illusion for the SMS, which is a totally different game, Land of Illusion for the SMS, and I think SMS and Genesis and Game Gear, and Legend of Illusion for the SMS. So I hope I got those right. There's also more recent games, such as Castle of Illusion remake on Steam, I believe, and maybe another couple consoles. We have another auto-scroller here. The one thing I will say about this is that there's a kind of kill all enemies fireworks power-up somewhere in this auto-scroller, and as tempting as it is to get that, it actually freezes the screen for a little bit. So in a speedrun, you certainly don't want to get that.
Yeah. And Edenal is very good on health here, so he's very, very well set for the final piece of the stage.
So this final part is quite difficult because you have these kind of cards stacked enemies like those guys, and they kind of have odd hitboxes. Basically, your damage ability, that kind of cape with sparkles coming out of it, has two components.
What?
The cape, which actually does damage, and then the sparkles, which just stun enemies. And so these kind of card enemies just feel like they have very odd hitboxes, and can really kind of, you'll think that you did what you needed to hit them, but they just won't take damage, or they'll take damage differently than you'd expect, and it can just kind of be a little off-putting at some points, but Edenal handled it very well. So we're approaching the end of the game here, and what's been a really, really solid run overall. Very solid, very quick seesaw jumps and stapler jumps. The record, actually, this game has seen a lot of attention recently by a speedrunner named Tenebrae. He actually, he's cut the time, the second place time, which was formerly thought of as very, very solid, by about 10 seconds. And so I think, I don't want to misquote it, 14:52. Whereas I think the previous one was a very low 15 by Darbian. So Tenebrae has really been pushing this game, and it's been really impressive. Here we have the final boss. Not too much luck here, really. It's really just kind of timing your attacks so that you minimize his vulnerability periods.
Proper time, I think.
Your PB was 15:25, right? You know, something like that.
My PB is 15:17.
15. Oh, nice. It's pretty good time. Real good marathon time.
Not bad.
And
Thank you. Thank you.